Not Quite Right features discussions that are unfiltered and uncensored and may include themes that are inappropriate for younger listeners. Also, I swear a lot.
Something doesn't seem quite right.
Welcome to Not Quite Right. My name's Ed.
And I'm Amanda.
Amanda, I've got one question for you.
Oh dear.
Shall I compare you to a kiss from a rose on the grey?
Is it going to be a flattering comparison or? Have you had a kiss?
That's all I got.
I'll take that as a compliment, ? Just for context, it's now after midnight.
It's midnight and we're just starting the recording of this Shortlist episode.
And I am very excited, but it's been a long night. We've long listed already up to this point, and here we go. That's why we get a little bit slap happy at this stage
So
of proceedings.
If it sounds like we're losing control, it's because we are.
Thank God we have some other people who are going to give us some maybe a little bit better words.
Yeah, some gooder words.
Some gooder words and such.
So, it's the Shortlist episode. Is this the pointy end of the stick?
You love a pointy end, don't you? You're always bringing up the pointy end. Yeah, it is. I mean, we've still got the Daredevils obviously to come, but I guess this is like...
As far as sticks go, this is the pointy end of it.
Pay the jar.
All right, we're off to a good start. It is the Shortlist episode, so we will find out not only who our shortlisters are, obviously, but also who our winner is. The winner of the April Not Quite Right prize for 2025. Plus, we've got 3 wildcards this time around.
Yes, 3 wildcards, an extra bonus one from Dean. But yeah, you were talking about pointy things. There's that pointy trophy, don't forget.
True.
So we've got another trophy to hand out, which I find like endlessly exciting. And of course, all of the shortlisted authors will appear in our anthology at the end of the year. So your name, your writing will appear in an actual physical book.
Yeah. So publication, money, trophy, accolades, we're just like throwing it around. We're making it rain.
Glory,
this episode.
not holes.
Glory minus the holes.
So a lot to be excited about, basically.
All right, so let's start out with our wildcards. So our wildcards are stories that didn't quite make the shortlist, but we wanted to, like, they've got a place in our heart. And so we would like to give them a little token, and that token is a small prize and a little bit of kudos.
Yeah, so 100 Australian dollars. So my choice this round was, drumroll please, Choices by Tom Brodkin. And shout out to Tom. Tom's been with the comp for quite some time now and has had some success in the past with long listing and so on, and has in fact been a daredevil as well. And the reason I wanted to call this story out was because, Tom, you were so bloody close to that shortlist. And I suppose there was just one little niggle that kept you off that shortlist. But like there was just some beautiful imagery. I remember calling out the line about the tornadoes and just the story in general just developed really well. And I guess both Ed and I, like, it was up there for us and so close. So I guess this is just like the consolation prize. Like, you nearly got there. And it's a beautiful story, and I hope that it finds a home somewhere outside of Not Quite Right. So submit it to Lit Mags. Yeah,
it was a beautiful story. It was very intense. And it had some great lines, which you called out on the last episode.
Yeah, so congratulations, Tom, and thank you for a beautiful story.
Did you want to say, like, what the fatal flaw was?
I guess it's only fair to you if I'm saying go submit this to Lit Mags. There was a fatal flaw for us, and that's what kept it off the shortlist. And that was the ending. You know, we're developing this character. We're starting to get this investment. The scene setting was really great. The drama was escalating. But then there just wasn't quite the payoff that I suppose we'd been set up to expect from that. And so we would have liked the ending to kind of just really wrap it up and to make it feel like that sort of satisfying package or whole.
And like, just to rub it in a little bit more about how close you got, there were probably about 5 stories in contention for the number 6 slot in the shortlist, and this was one of them. So you came really close.
So I hope that my wild card is some kind of consolation for that, and I do hope that your story finds a home outside this competition. So, Ed, Who took your wild card?
My wild card pick this round was a story that I also did mention in the last episode as well, and that is A New Bloom by Lisa Vitale. And this is the one that starts with the dead husband's rose bush. And I thought it was a really cute story. It was like a really lovely story about like an elderly couple, I guess, meeting. It had a very strong take on the anti-prompt, which was like the insertion of this extra character doing crazy things in the background.
Memorable.
I thought it was a fun take and I thought it was well executed. But it also heavily complicated the story because there's that whole extra character in the background. But like I thought the writing was really good for that core story. And I think I just want to encourage your writing, Lisa, because I thought it was a very well told story.
Lovely. And we've also mentioned that we gave Dean the power as assistant judge to award his own wild card. So a little bonus wild card this round. So let's hear from Dean now as to who took that home.
Hello, everybody. It's me. It's Dean again.
Back again.
I know you woke me up, but it's fine. I'm here. This is exciting. I didn't expect I'd get this honour. So congratulations to Parrots in a Blender by J.R. Lowe. And I'll tell you why I chose it. I thought it had a really authentic voice, a great narrative voice. It was about a closeted teen character struggling to fit in, and I thought it used the anti-prompt really well in terms of the narrator was trying to remove unwanted parts of themselves or suppress them and sort of failing and ends up accepting. So it had some really funny lines. One of them I called out in the last episode, and some really great observations. Or maybe I just loved it because not only did it open with a question, but it did also not name the narrator at all. That's my middle finger to you guys.
Oh, it's Patty
Well
LaBelle. She's back.
So well done, J.R. Lowe, Parrots in a Blender. That's my wild card.
Congratulations. Thank you, Dean. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. And
See you later.
Yeah, see ya. Bye.
Right on.
Okay, so those are our wildcard picks.
So congratulations. And, Bloodbath City over in this long list. So to stand out and to shine was a huge achievement. Congratulations.
So now we're into the shortlist proper. And, the pointier end of the pointy stick gets pointier and pointier as you go.
God.
It's only going to get worse from here, Amanda.
Okay, great.
So as I mentioned, the battle for this sixth slot was quite intense and we had a number of candidates. This one we felt was the most complete out of these stories, and so it takes the sixth place.
The whole package.
So in sixth place is In the Pale Moonlight by Greg Schmidt. The kangaroo is a silhouette against the moonlit paddock. Dad and I are in the tray of the ute. We do not speak, but our breath clouds in the night air. He nods, and I ready the rifle in my arms. Dad has bagged a few roos already tonight, but he's finally letting me take the shot. My finger hovers anxiously over the trigger. Dad flicks a switch, and a beam of light bursts through the night, illuminating the kangaroo. Frozen in the spotlight, it appears unreal, like a statue. I'm reminded of the stuffed kangaroo I used to sleep with. On hot nights, its plastic eyes were cool against my skin. I shake off the memory. That toy sealed away in some box now, forgotten with other childish things. Dad says roos are pests, and there's no place for them on the farm. I pull the trigger, and the kangaroo falls from the spotlight. Got it, I cry. Did you see, Dad? I saw. Let's go check. Dad drives through the paddock. Behind us rattles a trailer with the carcasses of tonight's earlier kills. Ahead, bright headlights stretch like fingers through the shadows, and a grim uneasiness grows within me. Out of the darkness, the fallen kangaroo appears, stark in the white light. It lays on its side, and steam rises from a bullet hole in its head. Dad leaves the headlights on and we get out. Nice shot, son. I had expected pride at Dad's praise, but it's lost before the ugly reality of my own action. Not wanting Dad to see me flinch, I approach the kangaroo to make sure it's dead. The beast's belly ripples with motion and I recoil. It's alive! A tiny nose pokes out of the kangaroo's pouch. 2 black eyes follow, shining in the headlights and wide with fright. No, says Dad. It was a mum. What do we do? It gets the same, son. Less the bullet. Dad stands over the dead kangaroo. The joey tries to squirm back into the pouch, but Dad reaches in and pulls it out forcefully. He grips its back legs, and the joey wriggles as it hangs suspended upside down. But Dad, it's only a kid. So, it's a pest just the same, and you weren't so shy to put a bullet in its mum. I drop my head, and Dad raises the joey in the air. He swings it down hard, smashing its head against the ute's bull bar. A loud clang echoes across the paddock. The joey hangs limp in Dad's hand. You want the farm someday? Here's the reality. Dad offers me the joey. Put it with the rest. I take it in my arms, surprised by the weight, and carry it to the trailer. I place the joey on the other dead kangaroos, and it nestles amongst them. It could almost be sleeping, if not for its black eyes, open and unmoving. In the pale moonlight, they look like plastic.
So, Greg, he's back again.
He's back. It's his 3rd time on the shortlist,
Oh,
isn't
my
it?
God. So clearly we like your writing style, Greg, to say the least, but very notably,
Quite
shift
a
in tone.
departure from the usual Greg Schmidt story.
Yeah, and do you know what? I think that's wonderful because I love the idea that you've kind of maybe proven to yourself that you're more than a fart joke or whatever, and proven to everyone else as well, and that maybe we are more than fart jokes too. This was a very moving story, of course, and it was beautifully told.
Yeah, and what struck me about this is, like, obviously there is the link into the anti-prompt, which is really what's driving this story. And I think it really engages with that question, do I or don't I? And I like that linking the kangaroo back to the childhood toy and that death of childhood within that character. I think the idea of doing what you have to do, it's a universal theme. And it's also a very male idea of having to just like cast aside your childhood and be a man. So I thought it was powerful, quite moving from that perspective. Also a very Australian story.
I speak as someone who has spent time on farms, not much, and I remember my dad taking my brother shooting. I don't know what they were shooting necessarily, just whatever they saw, and I wasn't allowed to go.
Yeah.
And that always bothered me, but I think I was naive about what I might have been confronted with. You know, I've been a feminist since I was a little girl.
Since you came out your mother.
Since I came out my mama. But quite seriously, like, that kind of shit used to really bother me, and my brother got to go do that, and I just wasn't invited. But I would have struggled with it, and I think you make a good point, because I think there really is this kind of expectation on young boys to like man up, and there's something to that, and that's obviously not an experience that I've had. It's certainly something that I've witnessed, and I'm glad I didn't go. And having said that, like, when you're on a farm, like, life and death is just, it means it's different. It's so different. You're confronted with death much more often and in very confronting ways. And I remember, for example, on this farm, and it was my dad's old home, basically, cockatoos are a pest as well, another Aussie animal, native bird. And one time we went to the farm and there was a cockatoo that someone had shot at to get him out of the tree, but the head was shot off, and it was just the rest of the cockatoo sitting in this tree for like weeks and weeks.
Jeez.
And that's the kind of stuff, like I was a kid, I mean, it was far away, thank goodness, but that's the kind of stuff that you're confronted with all the time. And of course, this is like horrific. It's violent and like just the Joey in particular, like that real callous, just like it's just a pest. And like, I mean, we step on cockroaches all the time, right? Like at what point do they become our darlings? But yeah, like the sensory detail here, and I think the sensitive handling of that conflict between like, look, this is the harsh reality of life, on a farm, which is true, versus someone coming to this and like having to grapple with that for the first time maybe. It's a really like poignant kind of moment in a life. Like we talk about flash fiction, I guess, focusing in on like a really crucial moment. And it is like your innocence being shattered is a crucial moment.
And you've just surfaced a memory for me as well. When I was younger, my mum used to send me on like Christian camp and sometimes I was on a farm. And I remember this one year, and it would have been about, 10 to 12, as all the kids were kind of in that age group, there was like a dying rabbit who had like myxomatosis or something that was like, we found as children, it was like struggling around and we're all like, what do we do? And kind of stressing about this poor rabbit. And the farmer literally walked up, picked it up and went and just broke its neck and like threw it in the bin or whatever. And we're just like,
wow. Yeah.
It was a bit callous. And he just said something like, you're a blah, blah, blah pests and you've just got to do that. And like, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
My dad used to threaten to kill my pet bunny all the time because he was just like, what is this? This is like, why do we have a rabbit by choice? And, it is the reality. But I love the sensory detail in this story. I also love that conflict and it was throughout, right? And it escalated because we've got the shooting of the kangaroo, but it escalates. Then there's the Joey in the pouch and now we're facing that. And we can see that this child really wants his father's approval, but is so conflicted about it. And that's really compelling stuff.
Yeah. And not to mention that circularity as well. And we talked about in the last episode about sticking the landing. It ends with that vision of the eyes looking like plastic. And that's, a callback to the toy kangaroo that came to mind earlier. So it's that circularity and closing the loop and, ending on that poignant moment after the climax has already occurred.
And it's so relatable to the plastic eyes of a toy.
Yeah.
Like we all know what they are like, what they feel like, and we can probably picture our own childhood toys when we see that moment. And so, of course, that's going to draw us in. I think, too, there was lovely subtext right at the end there as well where he said, I take it in my arms, surprised by the weight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, there's so much beautiful storytelling here. It's very confronting.
So well done, Greg, on your third shortlisting and second in a row.
It's so amazing. Save some for the rest of us, Greg. All right, moving swiftly on. And in fifth place, My Peripatetic Soul Longs to Plant Itself Beside You by Joe Binns. Confession. Since the moment we met, I've been trying to kill my darlings, my darling. At first they were small, and though I longed to speak them, holding back was like swallowing watermelon seeds in the summertime. Honey, babe, cutie pie, just a syllable or two. No doubt they would disintegrate in my stomach acid. On our fourth date, you snorted beer out your nostrils laughing at one of my cheesy jokes. My darlings turned ridiculous to fit the mood. Pookie pants, my charming little chookling boots. They rose alarmingly in my mouth, ready to reveal themselves. But just in time, you left to the bathroom to wipe beer off your shirt. So I swallowed those darlings too, though they felt like peach pits rasping down my throat. I dropped around to see you one afternoon in autumn, 2 months after we started dating. You were singing to your pot plants as you watered them. Sunlight filtered through the windows and your smile shone as you turned to ask me, "What's your favourite watering song?" We danced around your apartment singing Africa by Toto at the top of our lungs, and then I went to make us coffee so I could stand in your kitchen a moment, and whisper whimsical darlings like my mellifluous melody maker and my perspicacious periwinkle. I couldn't swallow them. They were too big. I pruned them ruthlessly, hoping they'd wither like a hacked-up rosebush. You see, someone else killed my darlings long ago, cut them down when I said dear, broke my heart when I said I love you. So I thought, with you, I'd kill them before you could. I invited you around for dinner last night, cooked all afternoon, set up candles, laid out shining silverware. You were late, arriving breathless with apology. I got stuck reading. Do you mind if I just sit a minute to finish this? You held up 100 Years of Solitude. I told you it was my favourite book. You looked so handsome and happy to see me. But by then I'd lost my nerve, so I sprayed this darling with pesticide. You're the wave my heart surfs to shore upon. A heart sealed tight can never hurt. Or so I'd told myself. As you shut your finished book and grinned at me, I no longer thought that was true. So before I left for work this morning, while you lay sleeping in my bed, I wiped my old shopping list off the little whiteboard in my kitchen and, hand shaking, wrote you a note. Have a wonderful day, my darling. I'd done it. Throughout the day, all those macheted, half-suffocated darlings breathed loudly in my ear. My own breath was short with anticipation. I was excited rather than scared. I knew I'd get a message back. When I got home, my whiteboard read, "Good evening, my tender-hearted twinklebutt. Call me." I danced around my kitchen as my not-killed darlings blossomed in a riotous bloom. And then I called you. So congratulations, Jo, on a beautiful and fun story in which we were confronted with many darlings of the literary variety.
And a story very obviously inspired by the anti-prompt.
Absolutely.
And like, what a great take. The idea of not only killing the darlings, but like the darlings being the word darling, and taking that to another level of making that all about the character and weaving through like that past trauma that has caused that character to kill their darlings, and the new love that's blossomed and allowed her to unkill them to a conclusion that is very much like a happily ever after.
Yeah.
Very satisfying conclusion.
Absolutely.
So, well done.
Yeah, and I think when we set the challenge, and we never know how it's going to be met by the authors in the competition, but I think this is kind of what we're aiming for, like someone who thinks about the challenge and goes, hang on, what's a way to include this that will actually make sense in the story, that will benefit the story and not hurt the story? And I think it does. I mean, you might argue that in a couple of instances it's a little on the nose with the references to killing darlings and so on for our benefit in this comp. But nevertheless, like the heart of the story is there and it's really cute. It's good fun. I also wanted to call out that like we have a very clear midpoint here where things start to turn, and that is where the point of view character mentions this like past, trauma. And so we're just like, it's all a little bit silly and a bit light, and then, okay, no, there's something else going on here. And I think that's really important. I think without that, this story might have lacked maybe some of that conflict and drama that you really need to get engaged in something. So I think that was a really crucial sort of turning point for this story.
And I think another crucial element is the details of that relationship as they form. So the dancing around the apartment singing Toto, and the reading of 100 Years of Solitude, which is also the main character's favourite book. So we don't just get told like, oh, I've fallen in love with him and that's why I feel comfortable to do that. It's all showing, it's showing those elements of the relationship that cause her to come out of her shell and, allow her darlings to live.
And I think this is another example, and we mentioned this in the long list episode, of a story which we often say, look, flash fiction is usually only enough for one scene. And in this case, it's like a whole love story, but there is that cohesive through line of these moments where the point of view character is considering like saying something and then doesn't quite say it. So we're just capturing those moments. And at the same time, this story is escalating and moving forward in a still quite a classic narrative structure of that beginning, middle and end, but we're just getting it through these little vignettes of the relationship. And I think that works really well here. And, you know, it really does build, the stakes build, you know, we care more, the more deep you get into a relationship, and obviously like the escalating darlings too, like this person is clearly getting more and more attached and then takes that big risk right at the climax. And that's so important, right? Like something has changed here. Like they actually now have changed. They've escalated to a point where they're like, I can't take it anymore. I'm going to have to say it out loud or write it out loud. And then we wait for what happens next and we get to see that. So I think that was really, really well done. And I think that classic narrative structure is pretty much always going to make it feel like a satisfying story.
It's also very cute, like the idea of this woman just desperate to say these words like periwinkle and like it's a cute premise. I love it.
Yeah, totally. And I don't know, I feel almost embarrassed to say it, but this story gave me goosebumps when I read it. So this is one of those ones. I feel like I get goosebumps when I feel something is very true on a deep level. And this felt very true, even though it's silly. So well done. You had a real world impact on me and I really love this story. Congratulations, Joe.
So now in fourth place, A Priest to Know God by Torrinell. "13 steps to the kitchen. 5 forward, 3 backward. 6 forward, 2 backward. 1 forward." But that was only when he thought about Sarah dying, which was nearly every morning. Otherwise, Dean's coffee was just 7 steps away. The teaspoon only ricocheted off the inside of the mug once, producing a single concussive sound, which was never enough to stop his son's school bus from skidding on black ice and flipping on its back as it collided with a speeding Mack truck. 3 clinks. He needed to hear 3 clinks. But they couldn't be forced either. A single tap should allow the sugar to fall from the spoon, and the displaced weight should propel his wrist like a pendulum, ringing in the subsequent twin chimes. He had 4 teaspoons of sugar this morning. He preferred his coffee with 1, but the bus needed to arrive safely before he could put on his jacket. "Good luck with the pitch." Sarah kissed his cheek before grabbing her purse and swallowing a handful of vitamins as she ran out the door. How does she do that without water? She was choking. In his mind, she was choking. And those vitamins weren't FDA approved. They could cause cancer for all he knew. Sarah was choking to death during chemo, a scene that played out in his theatre of one thousands of times before. He was eternally bound by the shackles of relentless thoughts, watching rehearsals for a show he never wanted to see, praying for release. But he couldn't ask her to change her routine. He always concealed his obsessions, though his compulsions were hard to ignore, making him late to work and awkward at parties. But Sarah loved him anyway, and he couldn't imagine his life without her. So, he slid his fingertips along the groove of the backsplash while quietly counting to 17. It used to be 7, but she had a particularly bad headache one day last year, and he'd lost 10 more seconds of his life every morning since. Stop one ritual for one day, the experts say. See what happens. See that everything will be okay. But what if it wasn't? What if one more clink could save his son from an unending coma? What if one more step keeps his wife from being stabbed at the supermarket? What if 3 perfectly aligned pencils could prevent a catastrophic stroke? How could he live with himself? He was sealing his family's fate with 32 flicks of a light switch, a small price to pay for peace of mind. How could he risk changing anything? Things needed to stay the way they were. Always. These ceremonies, these observances, mattered. They were Where was his wallet? Right. In the dining room, where his world was ending. 5 steps forward, 3 backward. 6 forward, 2 backward, 1 forward. He sacrificed his time to a second cup of undrinkable coffee. A priest to no God. A suppliant to a strange faith. He was late for work. Again. So congratulations, Torinell.
Oh, I feel like people are going to be like rioting in the streets over this. Torinell just won and is back again in 4th place. But no, seriously, well done. This was a beautifully told story. I did also say in the long list episode after the credits there, when I was talking about my vague tweet shout outs, that someone I love struggles with this kind of thinking. And so I found this really compelling, and it's unfair, I guess. It's like, oh, okay, you spoke to me, and so therefore you're up on the shortlist. But it's not about that. Like, I think anybody who reads this can see how beautifully constructed it is. But certainly that got my attention. And I think for anyone reading this, like, that empathy, like that opportunity to really see in someone's mind. And we talked about as well that interiority, but how it kept moving. And this was another story that did that. So I mentioned 2, and one was about the hoarders and one was this one.
Yeah.
Definitely this is very interior. We're getting those direct thoughts reported to us, but at the same time we're getting balance. There's movement through the space, albeit 2 steps forward. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But interacting with the space and that meaning something and that having like impact on the story. And even the line of dialogue when presumably his wife says to him like, good luck with the pitch, and he doesn't even hear her.
Yeah.
You know, normally you want someone to react, but the fact that he doesn't and he's still so caught up in his head is exactly the point of this story. The way he interacts with his surroundings, the clink of the spoon, all those sensory details are really just sucking us in until all we can see are these moments, and all we can see is what he is seeing, the importance of the clink of that spoon, and it is much more than the clink of a spoon. And that's what really grabbed me, I guess. And it's very moving.
Yeah.
It, to me, makes me want to cry, like that someone is so trapped in this prison, and he describes it that way, you know, like I'm just trapped in this theatre of one, rehearsing this scene that I never want to see happen. And I question whether Torinell has some experience with this or knows someone who has, because this deeply personal look at it is just, it just smacks of like deep empathy and understanding of what it must feel like.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not sure if you mentioned it there, but like it's obviously a very specific medical condition. OCD is what's being described here, and it's never referenced or called out specifically in the writing.
Well, we do have reference to the obsessions and the compulsions.
Yeah, but never as a diagnosis or anything that's clear. But yeah, it is very accurate. And it is internal as well, but it is grounded in the actions. On one level, unwilling actions that he's taking, and on another level, like the fact that he's
justifying it.
Yeah, he feels like if he doesn't do it, all of these terrible things are going to happen, and that is what the condition is.
Yeah, that's the whole point.
And so, it's sad and it's moving, and like it doesn't end with a happy ending. It doesn't end with like, oh, and then there's a path forward here.
Yeah.
Not at all. It ends with like, well, now I'm late for work again and life goes on.
Yeah.
Which is very sad.
Yeah. I think that's what worked with this story. Again, that interiority that we were talking about, but the forward motion. But one of the challenges, and, you know, we had the question, well, what makes this interior story work and what doesn't? And one of the issues often with interior stories is that they lack conflict. Now, this story had conflict in spades, and it was mostly internal conflict with himself, where he's sort of playing out one scenario versus the other. But it's also conflict with his wife, or partner, that you can imagine, you know, she's like, good luck with the pitch, and he's kind of just checked out, not even really responding. You know, he can't find his wallet, like he's not really functioning. And Maybe he's stressed about his pitch and that's why this particular day is going a little bit harder for him. And, I think that conflict is really compelling and you don't need to have two people arguing to have conflict. And I think this is a really good example of conflict that, is pretty much within a single person, single character.
And I think probably my favourite part of the story, and it's the title and it's also the second last line, a priest to know God. It evokes that image of, you go to mass and you see the priest performing rituals, raising the cup and walking around and lighting candles or whatnot. All of these rituals that are part of OCD, but to know God.
But what's the difference when you think about it?
Yeah.
What is it that defines those two as separate things and one is problematic and one is not?
Yeah. You can take an atheistic perspective and say, well, they're both priests to know God, but
I guess one last thing that I wanted to point out about this story in particular was the opening, and encourage people to listen again or to read it on the website, and you can read the story on the website if you'd like to. It just sets the scene perfectly. We know where we are. We know who our characters are. We've got a sense of the time, as in dating the story, like it's a contemporary story, and it's a hook.
Yeah.
And God, it's so much to ask in a very, very brief paragraph, but Torrinell pulls it off very well here. And I think that's a skill that is very impressive, and it's something that we all strive for. I guess it doesn't always come naturally, but it's something that we should strive for, because in Flash, you just really need to very quickly do all of those things. I think for many other stories, I would have said in my comments like, oh, this was just a vignette rather than a story, or it was just a character study rather than a story. That's something I say sometimes, as a critique of a story, that it's sort of not quite a story, but this one was, it had your setup, it had that conflict, it had that rising tension, and it certainly had a conclusion, albeit a sad one, I guess, but which fit the narrative and which felt satisfying and which I guess left the reader with something to chew on. So congratulations, Torrinell, on another excellent result.
Yeah, absolutely. Loved your story. Well done.
All right. So we're up to our podium now, our bronze medal, our, green ribbon? Is it green? Third place ribbon?
I think so. Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say a surprise to both of us that it made it this high, but a very worthy third place.
And third place goes to Wanted Dead or Alive, Arson Andy and Shadow Sharon by Chloe Page. Folks round here like to argue about who's more deadly, Arson Andy or Shadow Sharon. But let me tell you, there ain't nothing more deadly than a woman after her share of the money goes up in flames. And the folks are talking about her when Sharon prowls into the saloon, her hat pulled low, keeping a wily hand to cleave a mosey. They're cursing Shadow Sharon and a faceless wanted poster hanging on that wall over there. These folks only know empty purses, missing persons, and never a ruckus, 'cause folks don't notice they have a shadow till it's too late. But Sharon ain't near those folks no more, 'cause there's a man at the bar, his hat pulled low, keeping a shifty hands in pocket silence. And Sharon's looking like a butcheress by day, ready to take out that man over there. This woman only knows robbing homes, burying bones, and never a hatchet, 'cause spilling blood was always a sealed kind of fate. And the folks are talking about her when Sharon follows that man to the general store, her hat pulled low, keeping a sneaky hands to self distance. They're cursing Shadow Sharon and Arson Andy for having burnt down that bank over there. These folks only know empty cells, burning smells, and never no gossip, 'cause there ain't no way that Fireworld bastard could have snuck in without her aid. But Sharon ain't near those folks no more, 'cause she follows that man to the abandoned jail, her hat pulled low, keeping a steady hands on jerry can malice. And Sharon's looking like she's about to give that man a taste of his own petrol over there. This woman only knows broken pacts, stabbing backs, and never her revenge. 'Cause the butchered man she's dousing has a stranger's face. And folks might still be talking about her while Sharon gapes at the drunken decoy, her hat pulled low, keeping an antsy hand's too wet fumble. She's cursing Arson Andy for laying low after burning that bank before she could sneak her money out of there. This woman only knows bills and ashes, petrol splashes, and never a morrow, 'cause the cell door's slamming shut behind this dust devil woman. But Arson Andy ain't near those folks no more, 'cause I'm here in the shadows, my hat pulled low, making a haughty hand-on flint entrance, and I'm looking like a gentleman by day who is never in it for the money. I only know firebug thrills, one crook hills, and always my manners, 'cause you never douse a darling, you let her do it herself. Folks around here like to argue about who's more deadly, Arson Andy or Shadow Sharon. But let me tell you, there ain't nothing more dead than a woman with a shadow going up in flames. So thank you, Chloe, and apologies for my really weird accent.
No, I loved it. That was
story.
great. That was good fun.
It was kind of somewhere between Arkansas and like Mount Druitt or something. I don't know.
Full disclosure, I attempted it and failed miserably. And I'm very grateful to you for coming into the breach and rescuing us all from my terrible accent attempt. And thank you, Chloe. And I did shout this anti-prompt take out already in the long list episode. Like, you want to kill our darlings now? I love it. I love it. But also, like, not just that, right? Like, we've got this very, very strong narrative voice here that maybe... I mean, you could say it's a little self-indulgent maybe, like it's not something that you typically see. It's got this poetic tone to it as well. We're using some poetic devices like that repetition, breaking up those lines into these fragments, rhyming, like straight up rhyming as well. And it worked so well. Like it was so much fun. And full disclosure as well, first reading, I struggled on this one. I guess it's unexpected. And I was like, hang on, what is happening? Like in terms of the story, like I got the voice immediately. I got that sort of spaghetti western kind of vibe. But the actual plot and what is happening, and it's very detailed when you look at it again, it sort of got lost on me the first time. But reading it again, I was like, oh, wow, this is actually even more impressive because those rhymes, like they all add up to something. You know, they're leading us to this conclusion at the end. And this very much was a satisfying twist.
And yeah, this is a story with a really strong voice, and it's one that you can kind of connect with because it's one that you've heard in movies and voiceovers and like
it just
any
comes
kind
into
of
your head.
Western themed. Yeah, exactly. So you can hear it in your head, and like you said, that repetition, those poetic devices. You know, obviously you can't hear it, but you can see it on the page. Like the lines are broken up, empty purses, missing persons, robbing homes, burying bones, like the
It's
rhyming,
so good.
the poetic cadence.
But also the language choices there, like they really fit.
Yeah, and as you said as well, like not just words, but this is the plot unfolding. It's described in these little kind of poetic snippets. You know, you don't think of necessarily the Western voice as being all about poetry, but it is. Like it does have that poetic element and that slow talking cadence.
And also, let's be real, the cheese factor, right? Like there's a bit of cheese and I love that too.
Yeah.
Like the melodrama of it. Yeah. And I said killing our darlings, right? To be clear, Chloe is killing off your wife.
Yep.
And I guess my husband is to blame, although he lets her do it herself. And that absolutely got our attention, right?
Yeah.
But we were shocked to find this story so far up the shortlist because we're like, hang on, are we just being completely biased here? But I think you kind of have to work harder.
Yeah.
So you've got our attention, right? You've immediately got our attention. But we don't know when we're reading this, again, it's all blind, right? We don't know if you did that on purpose or it's just a massive coincidence. And it has been a coincidence in the past, right?
The only tip off here was that, like, the brief explanation field containing just a smiley face. And that was
I
very
didn't see
intriguing.
that, to be
Oh,
honest.
really?
I didn't see that. So I was still just like, oh, is this on purpose? It must be. And of course it was. And like, that's good fun. And of course, yes, absolutely gets our attention. But you have to bloody pay that off. Like, there's a test and it's like, right, we're expecting something here. And if you don't deliver that, it's not going to land.
Yeah.
But it absolutely delivered. It was completely original. Like, I haven't read anything like this. Of course, we've seen Westerns and we know the vibe, but to see this as a piece of flash fiction was something completely new for me. And that's always exciting, to read something fresh and new. But yeah, this story has a twist and, you know, twists don't always work, especially with jaded judges who've read, you know, thousands of stories. But this one, the twist worked because, so we've got the twist of like, hang on, it's a decoy. And then we've got another twist of Andy's here and you're going to go up in flames, basically. Like, you think you're the one going to set him on fire. He's double crossed you and now you're the one going to be set on fire. And that's just perfectly fitting for this story.
Yeah, and it's the twists of this nature are perfect in Westerns as well. Like,
Yeah,
totally fits the theme.
So well done, Chloe. You got our attention. You held our attention and you made it all the way to the podium.
Yeah.
Congratulations. So now, in second place and taking home 1,000 Australian dollars, as well as a place in our anthology, along with all of our shortlisted entries, is A Beach, if you could call it that, by M. Springer. So, a beach, if you could call it that. A narrow strip of shoreland wedged between basalt cliffs. Maybe. Puffins? Definitely. Their black and white plumage poking out of rock crevices like mould on stale rye bread. Chanting, low and guttural, against the creamy orange of the setting sun. So, basalt cliffs, perhaps, and shoreland in between. And on it, humans, of course. An old-timer combing the coarse sand with her metal detector, hoping for a quarter amongst the electronic waste. And a father and his teenage son, listening to the deep baritones of hundreds of puffins, their voices echoing from east to west, overlapping like the world's least talented a cappella group. So, a racket of seabirds and unlawfully disposed of electronic waste, probably, under the shoreline wedged between basalt cliffs. And on top of the eastern precipice, a couple acres of oceanfront property, sealed off, still in development, and a billboard announcing to the puffins nesting underneath that this too will become human land in time. And the father enjoying the birdsong like he always has, not noticing the tune has changed. But the son understands. Immediately, instinctively. So a narrow strip of shoreland somewhere and an oceanfront property encroaching on the puffin's habitat, and birds that once ruled over the vast coastland confined to the western bluff, perched together in their own droppings, drinking the same contaminated water. After a strained final chorus, an infected puffin with thinning plumage stops mid-flight as if burdened by an invisible weight. And so it begins. So a teenager that has heeded the warning spilling down the basalt cliffs and fled, and puffins flying erratically at first, then falling out of the sky like feathered cannonballs, and one of them strikes the old-timer, showering her metal detector in crimson droplets, and the father runs over to help, and so it spreads. So 100 strips of shoreland and 100 cliffs with oceanfront properties in various stages of development, and thousands of puffins dropping down like kamikaze pilots, and 100 roads moving inland, sticky tar veins binding human life together like bubblegum hastily pressed between popsicle sticks, veins now transmitting deadly pathogens directly to its heart. So a father that started coughing and faded away, and a son that becomes a father himself later. For despite the bird's wrath, he hasn't given up, But his resistance is in vain because the puffins have been here since the Eocene and humans have forgotten that, probably, and now it's their turn to be forgotten. So, an unread billboard on a basalt cliff, touting progress that won't arrive, towering over a beach, if you could call it that, and an abandoned metal detector partly buried under the coarse sand. And silence. Mostly. And then, on the eastern precipice above a narrow strip of shoreland, a nest, maybe, and soft purring emanating from within. And after a while, the plumage of puffins emerging from basalt rock, like the first petals of spring after winter.
So congratulations, M. Springer, on your second place getting story.
So this one hit me like the first time I read it.
Same.
I'm like, obviously that language of the so and the maybe and the perhaps, like that's different for a start.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it gets you, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah, there's something really poetic about it. And it's, I think, probably for both of us, like it's just an emotional reaction to that language and the way that the story unfolds progressively, but with that repetition alongside. And I mean, it's telling this story of like some sort of viral apocalypse that kind of wipes out humanity, but it's doing it in this like really piecemeal way of kind of starting and then restarting again with a little bit more detail. And so M. Springer writes in the brief description, reflecting on my own editing practices for microfiction, the darlings that end up on the cutting room floor are usually extensive descriptions and scenes that do not strictly introduce new information. To fulfill the anti-prompt, I decided to lean into repetition as the primary technique for my story, injecting offhand descriptions that might seem redundant or indulgent in other pieces, with deeper meaning and ultimately elevating them to central pieces of the narrative. And like it is all of those little details that are poetic, and some of the descriptions are really powerful as well.
So we've got the comparison of the puffin's plumage initially, like mould on stale rye bread, and then right at the very end there, it's the first petals of spring after winter. So that's very, very clear contrast that's provided between the beginning and the end. And again, that circularity, like bringing it back to the plumage, I think was a good choice. I would like to just inject some meaning in here, and this is what we get to do as readers, and M. Springer doesn't get to reply, at least not right now.
Yep.
I get to just think whatever I like about this story, and I do love that, and that is one of those things that makes a story satisfying to read. But I guess what I imagined here too, like when we've got this a beach maybe, if you could call it that, it's almost like a history being told. But the history is incomplete because the people who are potentially telling this history have come in after the fact, you know, and they're looking back and they're kind of like, well, I guess there was a beach and, the puffins were there and then this happened. And it's kind of this piecemeal kind of telling of this history that may or may not have happened exactly how it's being described. And I think that's kind of cool because it implies that we've lost something, and we have, because if we think of like viral infection that has taken out most of humanity, then that's going to happen, right?
Yeah,
like we're just, things are told in rumors and we just get this piecemeal information. So I'm not sure like whether that was intentional, but I think that's a nice flavor to it as well that's added. And I think too, like there's also another potential interpretation where it's like, let's imagine this is happening. So it hasn't actually happened, but like a beach, if you could call it, like just picture what I'm trying to tell you. And then this happens and then maybe this happens. And the point is, the point is that it could happen and that it will happen if we don't change, like this kind of idea as well. And so all of that is what makes this really stick with you, I guess, and just sort of sit with you, this feeling that it gives you without maybe all the answers.
Yeah, that's true. It's that uncertainty, all the so's and maybes, and perhaps you're never quite sure like where the narrative voice lies. Is this the future? Is this the past? So yeah, it's really open to interpretation, and just having those we usually think of them as extraneous words that you'd normally cut. Like, you want to appear certain if you're writing, you'd cut words like maybe, and you have all these extra darlings, if you will, that generally get cut. And then in between that, you've just got this beautiful language and these really evocative images that kind of tell this story that is a little bit incomplete, but you definitely get what's happening.
You get the point of it, yeah.
And like it just has these moments like the puffins having been here since the Eocene. These ideas that humanity is temporary, but like the rest of the world kind of lives on. It's kind of a grander narrative than just like what the events that are happening here on the page. I think it's a very evocative way of writing.
And I think that what you've picked up on there too is something I loved about this story, that it zooms out, right? Like we've got this beach, okay, and there's someone with a metal detector and we've got that image in our head. And then we're zooming out until there's thousands of puffins just dropping out of the sky. But then we zoom back in again.
Yeah.
And so it's this escalating tension, and if anyone's seen, Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds or whatever, like that horrifying image. And we're getting all of that, but then it's coming right back down to the father and son again.
Yeah.
And I think that's really clever. All those callbacks, we've got the callback of the billboard, it's unread. We've got the callback of the plumage. We've got the callback of the father and son. And that circularity, like that rise and fall, that very clear arc that we have there, very, very satisfying, very, very cool, and well done.
So well done, M. Springer. But now we are like at the pointiest end. Like I cannot emphasize this enough. Really pointy end of the stick.
And the same end that will get the pointy trophy too.
And that's our winner, recipient of the Pointy Trophy, 1,500 Australian dollars, publication, and like bragging rights for eternity. And without further ado, that winner of the April 2025 Not Quite Right prize for flash fiction is Zombie Babe by Lou Weasel. I can't blast her. Not my Jenny babe. Even with her eyes, crazy as a roll-on deodorant ball and that textbook zombie swagger. I mean, it's kind of sexy, really. I lower my blowtorch. Dead leaves scrape as she drags a foot forward. The constable next to me squeaks, "Stop, or I'll shoot." Can't remember his name. Pen-pushing nerd from the Nolkaba side office. But with the plague wiping out half the police force, we've got jittery amateurs like him on field patrol, aiming his blowtorch about as steady as the windsock on Mooney Mooney Bridge. But he'll still get Jen if he presses the trigger. They're proper blowtorches, not those ones from Bunnings you get for creme brulees or clearing the dunny air after a steamer. I'm talking Hollywood flamethrowers. Jen pauses, wavering on the spot. Our radios crackle.
Kill the damn zombie! What are you waiting for?
My rookie mate answers. The plagued one has halted. Over. We aren't meant to call them zombies. Some high-up wanker decided it's not people-focused language. I half get the point, now that it's my girlfriend. But plagued one is sort of a turn-off. Whereas hot zombie babe, well, that's got a ring to it, putrefying flesh or not. I nudge rookie. She looks harmless, right? Maybe I can convince him not to fire. Maybe me and Jen can run away into the Wadigans and survive off the land. And she'll be my Wilson, only I'll be Steven Seagal instead of Tom Hanks. Because I'm more Navy SEAL material. Well, less Navy, more SEAL. But I reckon I'd be close if I did push-ups. Rookie lowers his weapon. Yeah, she seems harmless. For a second, Jen's blank eyes flicker with that old spark I remember, when I'd lie there smoking with her tucked up beside me, playing with my chest hair. She'd gaze up at me and say, "It's only one chest hair, babe. Maybe you should just pluck it." But I never did, because I loved the way she twirled it while telling me I was her one and only. "Joshua," she moans. That's not my name. But Rookie's voice shakes like he just watched the end of Red Dog. Jen? I turn to him. You know her? He ignores me, stepping towards her. Hey, Jenny, babe, let's go. We'll run for the mountains. We'll be like Jane and Tarzan, only I'll be Sylvester Stallone instead of Brendan Fraser. She nods at him, cheating slobber lips groaning, and forms a love heart with her fingers. Except 2 are missing, so it looks like a damn moustache, which Joshua has, and I don't. So, she wants more bristle on her gristle? I reach down my shirt and wrench out my one and only chest strand, shoving it into the end of my torch barrel. I raise my flamethrower, ignoring Joshua's arm still in range, aiming level at her festering, clawed moustache heart. I can't blast my zombie babe, but I'll blast someone else's. So congratulations, Lou
my
Weasel.
God.
What a great story.
So good.
There's so many epic moments in this story. And a few times that I stopped reading just to laugh. Like the blowtorches for clearing the dunny air after a steamer. That was great.
Is that like a special product at Bunnings?
It is. It's,
How big is it too? I want to know how big these blowtorches are.
and just like the one chest hair.
I know. It's just like...
What an image. And like the fact that that's the reason why she cheats is that it doesn't have enough hair.
Yes, and coming back to the mustache heart and oh God. And I also want to call out, it's so hard to describe things in an original way.
Yeah.
But the way you have described the zombie movements that are so evident and clear, if you've watched any zombie shit, it's yes, that is what they do. They just stand and waver. Just stuff like that. It's very well done. You have a beautiful talent for describing a visual that's just bang, I see it immediately.
I also love the bit where, the protagonist says, you'll be my Wilson and I'll be Steven Seagal instead of Tom Hanks. And then the constable comes in with, just because he thought that. He didn't say it out loud.
I know.
But the constable comes in and says, we'll be Jane and Tarzan, only I'll be Sylvester Stallone instead of Brendan Fraser. They're both thinking in terms of moves.
And they both call her Jenny Babe.
Yeah.
And I would maybe point that out as maybe a little flaw there, a little logic flaw in how are they thinking the exact same thoughts kind of thing. But at the same time, he's a bit delulu, so it kind of works. Hilarious. It's just gold. It's just gold throughout. So she wants more bristle on her grill. Yeah. But the callbacks, we talked about it in A Beach, if you could call it that, but it's here as well. The blowtorch is there throughout, the chest hair and the facial hair, that's crucial. So every
and the
detail.
chest hair is paid off so much as well. It's not just a stupid detail. And then it's placed in the flamethrower. It's just his one and only chest hair, he'll pluck that on this occasion. It's all he's got.
Even just the visual too of I'm more Navy SEAL material, well, less Navy, more SEAL. But I reckon I'd be close if I did push-ups. The voice here, the character's voice is so strong, so original. All that stuff about Bunnings and everything. I think one thing that stood out to us too is probably worth mentioning, this reference to the Mooney Mooney Bridge, which is very local to us.
Which is just up the road.
It's
we
literally
go over
all the time. And we're oh, who wrote this? Clearly a local. So hi to all the coasties. Hopefully we don't all turn into zombies anytime soon, but... Well, I guess the thing we need to also mention is that this was the story that earned your favourite. A yes from me, a yes from Dean, across the board. So I'm so glad it ended up in first place. It makes sense to end up there. It's such a weird story to win. This weird zombie chest hair story, but But at
the same time, it's amazing. It's so hilarious. Good. It's so well put together. And it ticks all the prompt boxes. It's totally anti-prompt. This is not killing your darling. It's someone else's darling and then killing her. So what a great twist and a perfect take. And so many moments in this, also the PC changing of the name of the zombies. Just so
relatable.
Totally fits.
Yeah, the voice here is great. It is incredibly relatable despite the lack of zombies currently. I think we can all picture it. So Huge congratulations, Lou. I'm not sure if you want to reveal your real name now that you've earned the top honour, but huge congratulations to you. I'm sure your mother-in-law will be very proud of you.
And she probably will find out that you wrote this once she sees that shiny, pointy trophy up on your mantelpiece. There's no hiding it at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So for everyone who did make the shortlist, we'll have badges up on the website when this episode goes out. So if you've already downloaded and shared your long list badge, you can now upgrade that to a shortlist badge or a wildcard badge or a winner's badge, as the case may be. And we're a little bit different from other comps in that we won't tell people they won in advance of the announcement. So all of our winners and all of our shortlisters will be hearing it now for the first time.
Yeah, we don't like to spoil the surprise by emailing you and being like, send us your bank details. But please do. Like as soon as you hear the news, you can absolutely contact us and be like, hey, I came third. And we'll be just so excited to get your prize money to you.
And yeah, we'll be updating the leaderboard on the website and community badges. And so if you log into the Not Quite Right community, you should be able to see your shiny new badge. If you've shortlisted or if you've longlisted as well, you'll see it in there as well.
And the cool thing too, like we've already mentioned, obviously the shortlisted stories get in our annual anthology, which is really cool. So for some of you, it may be the first time you're seeing your name and your stories in print, and we are so honoured to be able to provide that opportunity for you. I've had that opportunity myself, and it's like just the biggest thrill. So I'm very excited for you if that's the case. And for those of you who might be getting published for, the 10th time, well, it like never ever gets old. I'm sure you'll agree. But also every author who made it onto the long list, your name will also appear in that book. We won't be able to obviously publish all the stories, but your name and the title of your story will appear in that book too, because we really want to showcase everybody who, survived the bloodbath, basically.
And a huge congratulations, not only to our shortlisters, not only to our longlisters, once again to everyone who entered. Like, it was a great round. So many unique takes on the anti-prompt and interesting approaches that we would never have come up with ourselves.
But let's do it again. That was good fun. Like, it's kind of like sad, I'm so excited, like gearing up to this moment to announce the winner, and so, so, so excited for the winner to hear this for the first time. But I'm also excited to do it all again.
Yeah.
We've got another opportunity coming up. We've got the July Not Quite Right prize for flash fiction, another anti-prompt, this time with a little bit more guidance about maybe how to adopt it, trying to remove that barrier a little bit and make sure everybody's able to participate fully. And another chance at the shortlist, the long list, and of course the prize money. But in the meantime, so we've just been at Words on the Waves Festival and we recorded a whole bunch of author interviews. So listen out for those. You can find those by searching Not Quite Right interviews on your podcast platform or, of course, on our website. And there should be some really great stuff in there. We'll be releasing those like sort of as we go.
They're probably not out yet, but we'll be releasing them soon. And we also have the Not Quite Right prize for flash fiction, which is open till the 24th of August. So that's our erotic fiction story contest. Free to enter and under 1,500 words, in response to the theme, making the unsexy irresistible. So,
like a zombie, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
A zombie babe.
So check that out if that's your kind of thing. We have $1,000 in cash prizes and a bunch of other non-cash but very compelling prizes.
There's a payoff.
There is a payoff. There's some circularity, if you will.
Some good vibes.
Some good vibes. But that's not the end of the line for the April prize. We still have 5 Daredevil episodes to come.
So you've been talking about the pointy end, but like it's the stabby bit now.
Yeah. Now the point has been really honed.
And now it's going to make contact.
Now it's going to kill some folks.
Kill some darlings. We're looking forward to it. So Daredevils, for those of you who don't know, they're those tortured souls who sign up to have their stories critiqued on air and us to share our thoughts, the good, the bad, the ugly, for all to hear and hopefully all to learn from as well. We're all just out here trying to improve our craft.
So, yeah, that about wraps it up. Thanks, everyone, for entering this round. We had a great time. We know that not everyone makes the short list and not everyone makes the long list. In fact, most people don't. But we loved reading your stories and we hope that you'll come back and join us next time.
You never know. It could be your turn next time.
And until then, ride on.
Ride on.
Thank you for listening to Not Quite Right. If you'd like to reach us via email or follow us on social media, you can find all the links on our website, notquiterightpodcast.com. That's WRITE. And if you enjoyed the show, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcasting app.
Something doesn't seem quite right.
I've been kissed.
by
Do you know I had to learn to sing that in year 7, so I actually know all the lyrics properly. There used to be a great tower alone on the sea. You remain the light on the dark side of me. Okay. Love remains.
I don't know. I'm not trying to
The
think of...
high, the drug, that's the high, not the pill. Did you know?
When it snows, my eyes become larger.
The light that you shine can't be seen.
Baby!
Okay. Glad we got that out of our system.